the regulators are busy this morning. So the SEC has issued a Wells notice warning to Coinbase that it is pursuing enforcement action over securities violations. Coinbase disclosed that the SEC alleges that the exchange may be skirting securities laws in running of its exchange and staking services. Coinbase shares tumbled as much as 20% after the notice was handed down. Adam?
Yeah, so this is a classic sort of move that I find to be pretty repellent from the regulators in the US. I think we can differentiate between two types of enforcement actions that we see. One type of action is what we see against folks like Duquan, maybe Three Arrows Capital. Again, there will be more and certainly have been more. I think we're talking about one of those stories related to Tron later today, where it seems like there was legitimately bad action and there were things that do make for securities violations. That typically is not so much the thing as the way that you talk about or you market the thing and the way you do disclosures. And so that's something that I think there's real legitimate value for going after and going after soon. In this particular circumstance, this is essentially a continuation of the US or of the US regulators' argument that if we think that something might be a security, then you have to proactively prove to us that it's not a security and in fact prove a negative before we'll actually tell you what the allegations actually are that you're supposed to be defending against. We saw this same tactic try to be used in the Voyager Digital bankruptcy, and the bankruptcy judge essentially laughed it out of court, as it should be. So again, effectively what we see here is the SEC using a very large bludgeon against a company that's literally been around since 2012, before I got involved with cryptocurrency in any sort of meaningful way. And I suspect that we may also see similar action against Kraken, which has also been around for that time. So again, the length of time that it's taken for the regulator to not even provide any sort of meaningful clarity about this, but to do real damage to publicly traded companies that are, by all accounts, trying their best to comply with laws that effectively don't exist. That's the narrative that's going on here. So it's sad to see, but consistent from what we've seen from the SEC most of the time. Zach?
This is a huge story, right? Coinbase is arguably the flag bearer of the US crypto industry, and for the FCC to put them squarely in their sights and issue that Wells notice is really quite remarkable. This is a company that went public, that went through the process of listing through the SEC, somehow managed to reach public markets, and now we're seeing SEC go after Coinbase for a couple of alleged violations, right? The idea that they're selling unregistered securities, going back to, again, some of those assets that they've named. You saw them do an issue, you saw the SEC issue a statement today. They're calling them crypto asset securities, right? And I think the naming, the nomenclature there is certainly intentional. And the other thing does relate to the staking product that Coinbase offers. Coinbase has said that its staking product is materially different from Kraken's staking product, which was also dragged in by the SEC. So it's going to be interesting to see what Coinbase does. I think all early indications from Brian Armstrong and also their chief legal officer are that they are not going to go quietly. They're going to fight this one and potentially stand up for the industry, which would be really fascinating to watch play out. So this to me was a huge story yesterday that Coinbase is, again, getting this notice from the SEC, and we're going to see, again, what their response is beyond the series of tweets and a series of sort of very public pronouncements around what is happening and why they think it's wrong. It's going to be fascinating to watch this one as well. Will?
Yeah, a letter from the chief legal officer of Coinbase was also issued yesterday, and his name escapes me at the moment, but it had some interesting language encapsulated within that blog, just talking about the process that they've gone through with the SEC in order to be a fully compliant exchange and to be a fully compliant exchange going forward, because those seem to be two different things, right? Like you mentioned there, Zach, they are a public company at this point. So at some point, the SEC did greenlight them to go public, and they said that on the basis of their business at that time in 2021. Maybe something has changed since 2021, but my feeling is probably not. If you're looking at what the SEC has said in the Wells notice so far, the information we have so far, it's about their earn program, their asset listing, and might encapsulate some other things like their Coinbase wallet strategy. Kraken, the stuff we got from the SEC a while ago, was more to do with their staking program, their staking as a service, which did have some aspects built into it that gave more bulletproof guarantees for revenues for people who were trying to use that product. Kraken had to change that product, and I think they actually wound down a lot of it in order to comply. For Coinbase, it seems to be like far larger, right? Their earn program is like fairly limited in scope. Asset listing, Coinbase has been listing assets for quite a while, and the SEC had the ability to review this for quite a while as well. And in this legal letter, which I want to get back to and encourage everyone to go read, they talk about how they have tried to talk with the SEC time and time and time again, but the SEC has always moved back the dates, canceled the meetings, given information that's not relevant, or just straight up said, we're not going to comment on this. We're going to decline to comment on anything you have to ask about this, which doesn't show good faith effort from the regulators in this case. And now there seems to be a Wells notice. I would say that like Coinbase, if anyone is going to be the team to fight against this, they have a very loaded war chest in order to fight anything like this. And I think it's going to be very similar to the XRP case, which is currently going on with Ripple Labs going after the SEC and them going back and forth. Jen, back to you.
Yeah, just quickly before we go to break, I wonder if this Wells notice in particular was issued with the purpose of getting more information, right? If you read through the letter, it's very vague on what they're looking for, and they invite Coinbase to provide any relevant documentation. I think they have until March 29th to do that. And I just wonder if based on that documentation, the SEC will decide whether or not to go forward. I think it's important to note that the SEC doesn't need to move forward with the Wells notice. It's a notice of intent, but they can just not act on it. And so that's what made me a little curious this morning. And Will, just off the back of what you were saying, an individual familiar with the situation told CoinDesk that Coinbase has engaged in over 60 different discussions with the SEC. And still, here we are with them being served this Wells notice.